Well, good morning, meteorologist Matt Lopon here as I'm trying to get a few things figured out on my system here behind the scenes as we're tracking a potential for some active weather over the course of the next couple of days. There are some thunderstorms out there now as I'm trying to get my wife and kids. They were heading out the door here for a minute to try to go to the library and run some things. I wouldn't necessarily cancel my spring break plans based upon what we have out there now, but we do definitely have a more likely, unfortunately, likely chance for severe weather as we look into the forecast by in particular, Saturday. And it's really kind of both pre-dawn Saturday as well as, during the day Saturday. That risk remains fairly significant. And unfortunately, tornadoes remains a possibility with this here. So I'm going to get this kind of showing the risk for today, and we'll go from there. So our severe weather risk as far as this, this Thursday is concerned is not particularly impressive, as you can see here. It does include many locations on the Mississippi side, mostly into Alabama, as storms largely move away from us. That threat largely does as well. And so let's kind of look at what we're looking at beyond this, because obviously the threat gets greater as we head into your Friday night, and then also as we work our way into Saturday, where it becomes a pretty significant and elevated severe weather risk. So unfortunately, we do kind of take this up a couple notches over the course of the next couple of days here. That's the unfortunate thing about the way this is probably going to play out. In the nearer term, I don't want to kind of jump past what we have on radar here for a moment. We did briefly have a severe thunderstorm warning that was out for locations in Marion County, Alabama, as you can see there. That has largely been lifted at this point here, and that storm is continuing to kind of move away to the east of us. There are additional showers and thunderstorms. This is what I was trying to get Emily and the crew all kind of set up for a minute ago as they were heading out the door, as you'll note here. These thunderstorms kind of heading toward the east. Again, all below severe limits at this time, and most should probably stay that way. There's kind of this low pressure center that's kind of out here. You can sort of see that little spin there. That is heading eastward, and as it does, kind of taking enough lift that we'll have these isolated showers. And so that is the reason why we do have that severe weather risk for today. This is the more substantial one. And again, here's today's risk. So just you can see the comparison that we're talking about between the two. And so some hail potential out of this, not an impossibility. So let's talk about the more significant reason, of course, we're talking about this today, and that is because of the severe weather threat going forward. And so I'm going to move a window here because I'm going to try to do my best to see. The hard thing for me is trying to see if I can still see your comments at the same time that I am kind of looking and doing what I'm doing. So I apologize if that's the one thing I'm trying to juggle right now. So let's talk about this severe weather risk. So here is your severe weather risk for Friday. Well, let's just talk about how this is a misnomer here for just a second, right? At the top, it says Friday. And that's misleading because technically in the meteorological world, the way the Storm Prediction Center, the branch of NOAA, you can see in the corner there, appreciate all those good folks at NOAA for what they do. This outlook, while we agree with it and while we would massage it if it didn't exist, this outlook helpful to us and comes from them. And so the severe weather outlook, as you can see, does include all locations, but their outlooks go from about 6 a.m. one day to 6 a.m. the next. So when this says Friday, this includes Friday night and the pre-dawn hours of early Saturday morning. For us, that is the key here because our peak potential is after midnight and probably closer to the middle of the night at some point while everyone's sleeping. So technically, not necessarily as much Friday as during the 24-hour period that is Saturday. And that represents our first tornado chance after out of what will likely be quite a few opportunities, or at least multiple opportunities going into and through your Saturday. This is the risk as it stood yesterday. You'll notice going to today, yesterday, today, there's been an expansion southward versus yesterday. And at the very top, you can kind of see there's one of those level 4 out of 5 risks that's been issued for locations to the north. The confidence on storms up there is substantially greater than it is here in that overnight window. And I'll show you that here in a minute. We're still not at a point we have all of our good high resolution projections in play yet, but this time frame where we're starting to get some of those in. So again, that is an expansion versus where it was before. The confidence is there that if we will see storms and if they can strengthen, strong tornadoes are absolutely a possibility. That's why when you look at this graphic here, you see that hatched area, the black lines on there. We have it as white dashed lines, but black lines here that indicate the potential for strong tornadoes, EF2 or greater, in this zone here. So that's a concern, obviously, a significant concern that we could have that potential overnight to go along with the damaging wind threat. And you'll notice that brightest pink up there at the top, the greater potential for significant greater than 75 mile per hour winds are up in that zone, but we have that encompassing most of the area as well. This is, I would say, both these threats, low confidence but high impact, meaning I'm not confident that again, this is not Friday. This is after midnight Friday night, prior to dawn Saturday, okay? So again, a misnomer at the top there, and not necessarily a misnomer, but for our application and for our thinking, it's before you wake up Saturday morning. Hence the reason, I don't know if you're like me, it is, last night was Wednesday night until I woke up this morning, and then it was Thursday morning. And so that's kind of where a bit of this comes in, right? But this is a low confidence setup for this time period there, and does, by the way, also include the potential for severe hail, but mainly to the north. So let's talk then about Saturday. So here was yesterday's outlook from the Storm Prediction Center for Saturday, and here is today's. A couple things I want to point out on this. Ignore the fact there's a shading difference. That's just that's a choice made. But notice how yesterday's line, as we talked about, close to the Natchez Trace, and we said don't get attached to the line location, right? Latest update today has backed that farther to the north and west. If you watched us at all yesterday, you know that should not be a shock. That was definitely expected on this. And so that is because the moisture coming up with this system is pushing farther north and west, and there's just going to be an enhanced zone close to where we have our boundary that'll cause all this, that could see some of the peak tornado potential. And so with that in mind, while yes, it's easy to say, oh, this is Meridian, it's not Oxford. Not at all. Not at all. Don't think that at all. Wherever this boundary sets up and really gets cooking, near that, there will be a significant, strong, and potentially violent tornado threat. And I don't throw out the V word there, violent, very often, but this setup has that potential, unfortunately, to see active weather at that level. Hopefully that's not the case, but that potential is absolutely there. So when we kind of look at, again, the odds on this, as you can see here, in the corner there, obviously anywhere where you're in the black dash lines, that's significant severe. Storm Prediction Center on day 3, which is what technically Saturday would be, day 1 being Thursday, day 2 being Friday, day 3 being Saturday. They do not break out tornado versus wind versus hail. The combination of wind and tornado threat is extremely significant for individual thunderstorms producing rotation, trying to produce tornadoes, possibly producing long-lived, violent, strong tornadoes. No guarantees it's over top of your house in Tupelo or Starkville, but I would say if you're in this darker red zone, the possibility of an EF3 or greater tornado, a strong tornado, and potentially a violent tornado of greater than EF3 strength is absolutely there. Hopefully it does not happen, and we could be talking about multiple of these, but this has the potential to be our most significant severe weather setup of the year. In some years, we don't get a setup that looks quite this impressive. There are thankfully still questions surrounding it. But again, going back to this graphic, do we think it's possible to see an upgrade to a level 5 out of 5 risk for part of the area as confidence increases? Yes, because that is not just about the peak strength of severe weather, but it's about the combination of strength and opportunity. So if you expect to have high-end tornadoes, but you also have multiple opportunities to see tornadoes, that then increases this. So think about this as an opportunity, right? So your chance to, I always think of an analogy, and I'm not going to think of a good one right now, so I don't want to get too distracted. But the reality is high-end tornadoes are possible, and there will be multiple opportunities to see that kind of active weather. So let's talk about kind of some of the model projections on this here. And our highest resolution one, the one we kind of show a lot on TV, The one that I can show you at home here, we call the HRRR, is in the process of coming out, and so it has some of those storms we have out there right now. Has again a few of those kind of try to redevelop this evening, northeast part of the state. Generally that. A couple hailstones, a couple wind gusts, nothing I'm overly concerned about. As we progress into tomorrow, you won't see much. You can see 22, 23Z. This does show a few isolated storms trying to develop, and I'll be honest, we'll look at this here in a second. That is infinitely more storms than what it developed late tomorrow evening, even when we were looking at this just a little bit ago. And by the way, I see Kenny and a few people mentioning that the app radar is delayed. Let's talk about that. I'm gonna do a tangent here for just a moment. Give me a moment. I think this is worthwhile because that's like the third person I've seen mention that. I just want to make sure that we understand something. I'm gonna pull up the app and I'm gonna make it full screen here for just a moment. Give me a second here to kind of make this here, put it on camera. Okay, so here's the app. There's kind of what we have on the app. But if you're looking at radar, right? My radar is good. So why is your radar different, right? Your radar might be different because what's going on here in the corner. If you click 24-hour and some of these other things there, you can end up with a future radar that's on there, and that can mess you up. So sometimes if you're having some kind of delay on your app, on what it's showing on radar, things like that, you have to make sure that it's not on future, because even mine's on future. So I click my 24-hour, or I click my clouds and radar there. But there's a button right there that says future. Tap that button, and now it's past. And if it's on past, you're going to have radar where it's supposed to be. Okay, so that should hopefully be helpful. And let's double check to make sure that radar is good, now that I say that. Let's go back over here to radar just to make sure the positioning is pretty close on that. Yeah, that's pretty close to where it should be. So takeaway on that being that make sure your radar is set to the present time and not future. A few more storms down there near Houston. Again, those could have some hailstones with them. Okay, I'd say that's a very real possibility on some of these. So let me give me a moment here to try to get all your comments over there so I can kind of see those. And let's get this back over here to our future projections, okay? So now this is a lot more storms than what it was indicating, even some of the overnight runs. If I go back to what we saw in the middle of the night, this is the same time period here. Let's go, let's hard code that 5Z, 6Z, sure, that's fine. So let's hard code that to 48 hours. That's a little bit more than what it had 6C. Maybe a lot more is overdoing it, but you can definitely see there's a little more in the way of coverage of storms. This would be tomorrow night at 11 p.m. So this does have a few more storms than what some projections we're looking at, but this is about the farthest extent we can look ahead. This also has a lot of those projections getting into Alabama and getting stronger with a tornado threat there in the pre-dawn hours of early morning on your Saturday. So I would say of the things that we know and don't know, this is the round we know the least about. My concern is, again, going back, I got a whole lot of browsers up here, so let me get to the right one. So going back to this, that overnight tornado threat late tomorrow night and early Saturday morning. The concern is that it's not high confidence, but if we can get one of those storms deep enough, all the elements are there for it to produce a strong tornado. And overnight strong tornadoes are most likely to be killers. You know why? You're not watching. You're not paying attention to what's going on. You're sleeping, as you should be. So now's when you plan to make that plan to be wherever you need to be when that time comes, just to make sure that you are in the safest possible place. So that does mean tomorrow night, if we live in a structure that's not safe, we need to make sure that we stay with friends in a structure that is. And that's not something we say all the time. We've mentioned that before. I think we've even mentioned it this year. This is not high confidence. There's more than a decent chance you go and nothing happens for you. But unfortunately, there is a significant chance for tornadoes if they form to become severe. And good to see that fixed Kenny's radar. Hopefully that fixes yours as well. We do get that complaint from time to time. That is a solvable thing. Okay, so moment here. I'm going to make sure Chelsea knows I'm on. on live stream at the moment, period. Call me at about 20, question mark. Trying to straighten things out with everybody on the team as well. So let's look ahead again, the models. So we are at the farthest extent, basically, we can see with our high resolution models. And this model coming in just in the last couple of minutes. So let's look at this. You'll notice that this doesn't have as many of those overnight thunderstorms, right? Not as many as are possible, but where it has a few of those, and again, exact locations, it's always Monroe County, but it could just easily be someplace else. This does have a couple of those overnight thunderstorms in that 7Z would be 2 o'clock in the morning time period, So again, midnight to 4 a.m., our most vulnerable time frame. This has a couple of rotating thunderstorms that could potentially produce tornadoes. I run out of my highest resolution data by daybreak, essentially on Saturday morning. A lot of these models only go 48 hours out, this being one of those. And unfortunately, we lose the data at that point. But what can we gain from this? And what does this tell us about, again, what is a very significant severe weather setup on Saturday? First off, you'll notice where the bullseye is there. You'll also notice same spot that we have those morning thunderstorms producing it here. And so again, so much comes down to opportunity. And so the opportunity is there for a more significant, I need to set my phone on silent here for a moment because it looks like we're just going to go off. A more significant chance because there's just more opportunities showing up there, right? And so with more opportunities means more severe weather, tornado chances, and that then works the math on why this is the bullseye. But the concern is that this line starts lifting northward, or the moisture that's associated with that starts lifting northward. One of the ways we look at that is what we call theta E. It's a measure of kind of moisture and heating all combined as one. CAPE, a few other things that we're looking at there. But we do see between that and our dew points, moisture beginning a surge northward that will continue to stay in our area. But we already are fairly saturated, just kind of waiting on the lifting mechanism. I'm going to look at a different projection here that kind of shows that a little better. And this goes slightly farther out. And unfortunately, I'm still on my overnight run. This model tends to run a little bit slower than some of the others. But what we can clearly tell on this overnight run is that there's this push from the north and west, right? And then kind of an additional push here from the south and west of what we call a short wave that'll kick through. And that will enhance the severe weather potential as moisture is kind of working its way northward. And there's a lot of moisture on that, a lot of fuel working its way northward. So what this shows, unfortunately, is a similar thing for what the model expects. Okay, so what I'm looking at here, I'm just a little paranoid, I want to make sure we're showing the right thing. Yeah, we are. Okay. So what we're looking at here is, again, a similar time frame there. 7Z overnight, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Thunderstorms trying to develop. They are not overly impressive on this, but there's enough there to say that if you can get that one, everything's wrong for tornadoes, right? Right for tornadoes, wrong for tornadoes, wrong for you and me, right for the atmosphere. By dawn, that's about what we're looking at here. And then in the morning, some of those thunderstorms south. This has less of those truly developing south. And what this then has happened is if you isolated storms moving through and then a warm sector where we have some issues. First off, and it might not be obvious, I'm going to see if I can zoom this in to where you can get a better idea of what we're looking at here. But if you can see the arrows in the background, see all the arrows are out of the south and east. That's a dramatic change in wind direction from the strong winds aloft. We call that directional shear. And the directional shear is significant and will help produce rotating thunderstorms that rotate violently. This shows the atmosphere not truly lighting up with, the worst of its storms quite yet as of, let me make sure we need to zoom that in a little bit more. Hold on. So that doesn't have it fully lighting up as well as of, say, noontime and 1 o'clock yet, but unfortunately that has things where we have a primed, you can kind of just even see where these storms are all around it, that there is a warm sector of the atmosphere that's ready to go. Unfortunately, plenty of available fuel. That's what this CAPE represents. And unfortunately, one of the things this also shows is this shows that the atmosphere remains somewhat stabilized, meaning it's preventing it from producing storms until really impressive storms until it gets a little bit later. And all of my different ways in which I look at that are significant. My supercell composite, a way for us to tell and look for rotating thunderstorms, is highly significant there. You'll notice there is a time period. This would be late Friday night where it is elevated as well. Significant tornado parameter is as well. But there's some issues related to that fuel, that cape here, that may or may not be realized. That's why it's more conditional. Is the threat there? Yes. But the threat becomes more significant the next day as this big push of significant moisture comes off the Gulf. And at that same point, we also have high levels of that supercell composite and high values, very high values of what we call significant tornado parameter. That value there, that 17, is extreme. And so all of that to say that our rotation tracks aren't showing up with much at this point on this model. They wouldn't at this point, because what you don't see when we look at the different what we call simulated reflectivity is you don't see the individual storms deep enough at this point. That will unfortunately happen based on this setup. So all of this to say, we are very early, and I can show you some lower resolution stuff that goes out farther. This is a low resolution version of that NAM, and watch what happens as we go into the afternoon. We have a lot more thunderstorms develop, and even this low resolution one depicting individual thunderstorms. But what I want you to concentrate on for a moment are some of those other parameters here. We talked about that fuel, that cape. As we destabilize, that cape keeps a significant peak here into the evening, and my concern is this. And in particular, I'm going to stop it. This shows this would be 7 p.m. And I don't know that we're going as late as 7 p.m., but the fact that we even might is not a good sign. So let's kind of lock this in at 7 p.m. That'll be 66 hours, is that correct? Yeah, 66 hours, okay? And so note at that time there, our supercell composite is extremely high. Our significant tornado parameter is extremely high. Our lapse rates aloft are decent. And low-level lapse rates, we're starting to lose some of the heating of day, so we won't have as much of that, but that isn't as much of an issue as far as that's concerned. Because by that point, we should have lift that's helping to produce the thunderstorms as well. So as I go back to that measure of moisture, we'll always like talking about, always talking about the green, the blue, and the dew point here, right? So that surge that we see there into the afternoon to early evening, which is where we're at right here, like this should be 60 hours. I believe this should be the kind of midday and then evening time period. There's just this point where we have enough fuel, enough moisture, enough everything that things are not good. Because at the same time, we also have strong winds aloft coming over and a big change in wind direction. So all of this to say, there's a lot of nerd stuff I've just shown you. What does it mean? In my opinion, it means this graphic might be underdoing it. And that's not something I say lightly. There's significant opportunity for significant severe weather and significant tornadoes that could be strong. We would be lucky as a people to get out of Saturday without a high-end tornado or two or three. It has all the makings of a severe weather and tornado outbreak in this part of the country. And by this part of the country, I mean Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, parts of Louisiana. When we see tornado outbreaks, and I'm not necessarily talking about generational tornado outbreaks here, but when we see high-end days that may be, where we end up with loss of life because we have strong enough tornadoes, this is kind of what it looks like. So unfortunately, it would not at all be shocking to see a higher risk level here. Let's talk failure modes for a moment. How does this not happen? Because so much of my job on these days is, telling you, what could happen. Let's try to think through here creatively for a moment how this could not happen. What is it to pray for, right? what is it we pray? How do we pray that we're wrong, right? Um, so I think the strong winds aloft are there. I don't think there's any getting around that. One of the concerns is when we look at the measure of moisture, that dew point in the lower levels, we have, a southeast wind bringing in strong low-level moisture deep into the area that really enhances the all of the parameters that we look at here. So, I don't know that we're going to be able to get the moisture to not pan out. We have enough moisture. We have the strong shear. So if we're praying against this, what we're sometimes what's always kind of a good one on this is when we start looking at a couple different ways I want to show this, but I think this might be the way I like the classic way here to show it. So this is precipitation accumulation. It is interesting in this model, and this is not one I typically go off of in this scenario, how you have this enhancement back at the front and kind of at the warm front there, and you don't have as much here in the warm sector. That does make me really want to double check some of the capping, the ability for these storms to be capped. I wonder if 21Z, let's choose right about there. Give me a moment. I'm going to pull up what we call a sounding. Nope, hold on. I need to tweak because I think it. Hold on, we're going to refresh on that again, and I'm going to make it go to the SEVERE. I think it's all basically the same stuff now on both these, but I want to force it to give me the severe sounding. Okay, so a lot of my components here are all high level, right? High supercell composites, significant tornado parameter. What I'm looking at here is I was trying to look and see if we had some kind of a warm layer aloft, some kind of a capping inversion that maybe would be difficult to overcome if you're talking about just warm sector storms. Here's what all that means. And actually, let's go effective inflow layer on that. Give me a moment. I want to see if that changes my... okay, real nerd stuff here for a moment. In order to get a storm to just pop up, right? Not have a front coming in the area, but just pop up, what we call open warm sector, which is our concern. You need to have what's called differential heating. You got to heat up enough that your moisture heat combination gets air to rise, and it rises and gets to a point, what we call the level of free convection, where it just is able to just go up because it's cold enough it can do its thing. So in order to determine that, we look for an elevated layer where it could be difficult for the thunderstorms to bust through. That works both directions. If you can limit the number of storms, that then concentrates their high-end potential, right? 10 storms over a small area, all are competing for fuel. They use up the fuel themselves, and you don't get a big tornado, thankfully. One storm over that area, though, using 10 storms worth of fuel can be really, really bad. And so one of the things we analyze and we look for is a layer aloft that prevents those storms from really, truly developing. That's what I'm looking at here on this nerd graphic. And we're looking to see, and it's not typically well represented in our models here. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. This particular one doesn't always do a great job with it. I'm going to go back and generate a slightly earlier sounding in the day, and there should be a layer aloft here that is a little bit, yeah. Okay, so you see how you have these two. I'm going to see if I can zoom it in. Hold on. Again, this is nerd stuff, so I apologize for just keeping you in the weeds here for a minute. But you have this area aloft here where you have that slightly warmer air, and so if a particle of air, parcel of air was trying to get going, it has to get over top of this red line we call the temperature profile. When we send up the weather balloons, should have said that to begin with. You send up the weather balloons, it gives us the moisture at different levels, it gives us the temperature at different levels, and it gives us the wind direction. And so this plot looks similar to what a weather balloon plot looks like, what we call a skew T log P. All of that to say, I'm looking for these little bulges you see there, right? And if one of those is sharp enough, it acts as what we call a capping inversion. And so it can take time to overcome that. I do see what looks like somewhat of a capping inversion there. that might be more pronounced than what this is. And so the thing we're praying for is one of two things. You go completely uncapped, perhaps, and maybe you use up all the moisture, but I don't know that that helps in this scenario because we just have a ton of moisture. So, but uncapped would mean you just have stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff, and maybe you don't have something that uh, that can really become dominant. And the other thing to pray for is that maybe that cap is just way too strong and stuff can't break through. I think that's less likely considering everything else. So in either case, this is kind of the key, this nerd thing here. We're going to have enough moisture. We're going to have strong enough winds. All the things we look at that say tornadoes are going to say tornadoes. It's just a matter of where the different projections are going to develop those and try to make those come about. So all that stuff, we're going to check all those boxes. So then it becomes about, can there just be so many storms that none of them become dominant in our area? Possibility. It's kind of hard to pray that we have too many storms because, it's anyway. And then the other part is that maybe that cap holds for whatever reason. And I just have a hard time believing that that's going to be the case. So all of this to say there's a whole lot of reasons for this to be a really bad day Saturday, both, again, Friday night into Saturday, and then Saturday morning perhaps down south, and then Saturday afternoon and evening for a lot of us. There's just a lot of reasons that this could be bad. So hopefully that's not the case. We zoom that all back out, get that kind of back to where it was. So again, that's where the severe weather threat for Saturday comes from. I would largely look at this as your from midnight Friday night into Saturday morning all the way through probably 10 p.m. Saturday for our region in particular. You start talking South Mississippi, Alabama, other locations, it could extend beyond that. But unfortunately, this is a significant severe weather threat. So I'm going to go to this website right here. I'm going to say this. Yes, weather call is something that that we talk about a lot. It is something you need to have because it is your personalized tornado warning. Okay. So you need to have a way to find out if you're in the danger zone. You can find out more information about weather call here at WTVA.com/weather call. I highly recommend you getting it. You need it, especially that overnight time period, because if you're like a lot of folks, it can wear you out. There's no tornado warnings now, by the way. Someone's just asking that. I just want to double check, make sure we're doing this. There's no tornado warnings now. And I didn't expect to see one, but there's definitely no tornado warnings now. But weather call will let you know in those overnight hours. If you're one of those people that just gets real nervous about this kind of stuff, there's going to be this tendency to stay up Friday night too late. And that's not to say we don't need to be paying attention, but it is to say that there's enough reason to have your nerves frayed on Saturday that it just makes it worse if you stay up all Friday night. So let's make sure we are within steps of our tornado safe place Friday night, early Saturday morning. And that means maybe staying the night at somebody's house. Because unfortunately, this is a significant risk. The other thing I will mention, I think it's shelters. Maybe it's storm shelters. Nope. Is it storm shelters? At one point we had it on here. Ow. I got to click on weather. Hold on. Do the drop-down menu at WTVA.com. And storm shelters is to click there. At one point we had, I think, a faster link there. But anyway, at WTVA.com, search for storm shelters. There's a list of area storm shelters on there. Is it a comprehensive list? We think it's pretty comprehensive. Is it possible there are more out there? Yes. If that's the case, let us know. But there's a big, long list there of shelters around the region. WTVA.com, search for shelters to make that determination. This is a scenario here where it's reasonable that we're going to need folks to be in a reinforced shelter from these storms. Strong tornadoes are possible. And so reinforced shelter, like the one my family has down there in my closet, Certainly places we need to be thinking about being, Saturday in particular, and we need to be at least within steps of a safer place, um, Friday night as well. Okay, if you give me a minute here, I'm going to try to bring back over my chat here. I'm going to quickly look through your. Can a storm shelter withstand strong tornadoes? Yes, they should. Should be fine for strong tornadoes. Here's the thing you need to know about any storm shelter. Any modern storm shelter, yes, is designed to withstand a 4 or 5 tornado. Anytime you're in a storm shelter and you get a direct hit by a tornado, you should expect it to be a very unpleasant experience. It should be a very unpleasant experience. And there's no guarantees that you don't have some kind of an injury. But the reality is if you have, whether it's below ground, above ground, reinforced storm shelter, the goal is survival. And in those cases, even above ground shelters, you're going to survive. As long as it's, FEMA approved, all that kind of stuff, right? You're going to survive. That doesn't mean you won't have an injury or two, but it's about making it out alive. And in most cases, you are going to come out uninjured. That is obviously the goal, but there's no guarantees. Someone talking about an estimate of $6,700. Everything's gotten more expensive the last few years. There are a number of people around here, many that advertise with WTVA, that do produce shelters that are good. I would say certainly we're seeking out something that is as good as we can get it, right? So I think I'm hopeful that is what we can find. And certainly we need to be seeking that out. Give me a moment here to kind of look back through. I'm glad somebody else was helped by the app. They added that feature there, and I've just never been a real fan of it. Okay, looking back through here, looks like we're pretty much on the same page on most of this here. I think everybody's kind of got the timing sort of figured out. Tell how to get weather call again. So WTVA.com/weather call. There's a place to sign up on there. And the way weather call works, and I have it on my phone. It'll call, and I think I deleted all of I usually keep at least one phone message from weather call in my voicemail, just because. And I think, here's what one of the weather call. Now that's a no longer in effect one. I might have actually deleted all my weather calls for a change. Looks like. Oh well. But anyway, the way weather call works is you put in your phone number, you put in your location, it'll call you there. And you might say, well, I have an app. In fact, I have your app, the WTVA weather app. Okay, great. That's important. Here's the thing about data. I've got a lot of alerts over here over the course of this conversation we're having, right? I've ignored almost all of them. But when a phone call comes in, especially a phone call that you put into your favorites, a call number, so you put in your favorites for do not disturb, it'll bust through. And when that call busts through, it wakes you up. It stops. I'm like, hold on, something's actually going on. If my wife were trying to get a hold of me now and she texted me, I'd ignore her. No offense to her, because I'm talking to you. But if she calls, I recognize her ringer. I'll pick up and go, something wrong? Just like when I was at men's retreat for our church a couple weeks back, and we had an issue with our dog, she called there, and I'm like, I'm doing Jesus things right now, and she had something we needed to attend to at that moment, and she called. So phone calls we just treat as a higher level priority. That's why I push it. It's instantaneous. It cannot be delayed. I can't have a phone call with you and it be delayed, right? So anyway, as I say that, I see a text message from my wife come in. So maybe I do catch some of those as well. WTVA's weather call. Please make sure you have it. Sign up at WTVA.com/weather call. Put in your location. Make sure the location's valid. And it will call you when a tornado warning is issued for your area. And it will call you back if that tornado warning is upgraded to confirmed. Meaning, just like we're saying on the air, confirmed tornadoes occurring. When the National Weather Service sees that, puts that in their text, it comes across there. It might be a few moments after we say it on the air. They might see something different. They don't always do that. Usually they do. And by the way, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know we do sometimes have National Weather Service people that watch this, not because they can't do this on their own. They do a great job on their own, and they do things that help us and augment what we do, and we appreciate it so very, very much. Share the link of essential items to take. Yeah, and I have the problem is I have that link on all those essential items on my computer at work. We'll probably again do another Facebook Live this evening. The one problem with the time change is when we do that evening Facebook Live, kind of like this morning, I don't have all my good new models in at that point because those don't come in until a little bit later. We'll be farther along at that point. We'll be able to show you more. But not all of our high resolution projections are in by the time we end up doing that Facebook Live. We'll show that again this evening. But again, we want to make sure we have essential medications, essential documents. I mean, just take a tub, put them in the tub, essential documents, insurance papers, birth certificates, things like that. That you have, essential medications for a couple of days, hard-soled shoes, keep your battery charged on your phone, and know you're live streaming something and that sucks your battery down. Well, we're all going to have a little umbilical cord, making sure things are ready to go on that. And just the essential things you need, make sure we have those when we go to shelter, so that if something bad happens, we're okay. Okay, I'm going to Linda was asking, are the models showing possible tracks yet? Not reliable ones that I can show you yet. Well, hold on. There's one I want to try. Hold on. Oh, man. Am I going to be able to find this link, though? I'm going to have to pull this out of my... Hold on. There might be one that I can show you. I don't know how... Give me a moment here. Boy, and I don't always like showing you something in real time without having quality controlled it myself. But let's see if I can pull you up one. We don't have a whole lot of projections at this time frame out that show the rotation tracks yet, but we're getting into that time frame. We'll have more of those for tonight. Okay, so listen, I'm going to show you something. And this is going to look like something. And just understand, this is not a model I go to consistently. But let's look at it. Okay. So I got to get this over to. Okay. So this is what we call the C shield. And again, this is not a model I would call a go-to by a stretch of imagination. But I want you to take away, so this is looking through Saturday morning, has a little bit of maybe something. Most of that's from the night before. As you can see, most of what happens the night before is up there into the Midwest. That's where that peak tornado threat comes from. I do think it underdoes our threat a little bit. But you'll note here, this is 10 a.m. This would be between 10 and noon. As you can see, some of those rotation tracks showing up west. And then obviously more into our area as we progress into the evening and through the afternoon and the evening. So yeah, lots and lots and lots of rotation tracks. Now here's what I think is all messed up. This has nothing down south. I think there'll probably be more down south than what this has. So I would say extreme grain of salt when we're looking at what we're looking at here. I want to check while we're at it, though I do want to check the wind maximum that it kind of kicks out here. And this is based on a model that I would not say severe weather is its peak priority. And you can see just the extreme winds they'll have back out into Texas with this. I mean, you 50, 60, 70 mile per hour winds. And then this has thunderstorms trying to produce, again, some of the more significant winds here when the line comes through, when the storms develop as well. So, okay, all of that to say, that's a very early version of the model I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at. The models I do trust start coming in midday today and into this evening. And they're going to show rotation tracks that show strong rotation. And what we're going to be looking for is consistency to see if it shows the same thing run after run after run. That consistency becomes more obvious tomorrow because we'll have more runs to look at as opposed to just one, which is largely the way it is tonight. And the reason, by the way, we don't have models that go farther into deeper into the distance is because high resolution convective lying models, small errors in the initial information going in can have huge errors on what it eventually looks like down the road. Um, so it can sometimes have biases we just don't want to deal with on that there. Okay. So with that in mind, again, you can see in the lower corner there, make sure that you're signed up on multiple of these. I don't know why, for whatever reason, that video is deciding to be upset all of a sudden. Okay. Was it doing that? No. Okay. Anyway, make sure you're signed up on multiple of those so you can get our alerts multiple spots. YouTube will be on all of them there. In particular, YouTube gives us some flexibility on certain things it can do as well on there. So you can use those QR codes, take your phone out, scan it, and kind of catch that. I'll make sure that it's working right. Make sure mine is popping up with what it needs to. Yep, mine's popping up with it. So anyway, scan it, follow us on the different spots there. I am going to pray real quick. Dear God, God, thank you for protecting us. You always do. Thank you for taking care of us. You always will. God, we trust that you will be there with us in the storm. We trust that you will always be there to calm with us. We know the storms will happen. We live in a fallen world. But you will be there with us in those moments. God, give me the clarity to unite people's attention toward what is coming in a way that is not promotional, but instead preventative toward problems that could come. God, help people to be prepared. God, help me to put any pride or preconceived notions aside, instead to see what it is that needs to be seen to give people the information that they need to hear to protect themselves and their family. God, I know that many people get anxious when storm systems like this come through. God, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit myself. God, can you take whatever anxiety is there and relieve that, and instead surround us in your peace that defies understanding? God, I know that there's a lot of ways in which this can go wrong and bad things can happen out of this storm system. God, give me vision, understanding, clairvoyance, however you want to put it, to see the ways in which things could still go right, so that I can give people a more effective thing to pray for. But God, I just thank you for taking care of us no matter what happens. Just help people be prepared, help people be smart. And just thank you for this incredible opportunity to speak with these people today. In the powerful name of your son, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Okay, so 9:52. We ran almost an hour on that. Apologize for that. So what I'm looking for again is there's a pretty good chance this is a bad day. And sometimes when I say that, people get these extreme generational tornado outbreaks in their head. You can have a lot of bad days that come at a level below that, but that's something we don't know until after the fact, right? So there will be certain comparisons that come up to other big severe weather days. I would sort of reject those comparisons and know that it's kind of like comparing your children, right? One child might be smart in one way, another child might be smart in another, and they both might be smart in the exact same way. They're both your children, they're both smart, right? And so, to compare this to other specific days, there are parts of this setup that do look like some other big days that have happened since I've been here. And there are parts of it that don't look like those setups. This is a child into and among itself that will have its own significant impacts. But it's highly likely that this is the most significant severe weather event we have this year, potentially. Um, Hopefully, there's not others beyond this. But we were expecting an active March spring season, still expecting one as well. So highly likely to be an impactful day. Plan accordingly. Be smart. Hey, and I don't often say, hey, like and share and share this post if you feel like what you've had here is valuable, and if not, take a screenshot or two and send it to somebody you know doesn't pay attention to this. Um, my audience tends to be a little bit more female than male. That means make sure your husbands, boyfriends know as well that y'all need to be. And I hesitate to say have tornado watch parties, but the reality is that if your residence is not strong enough, we need to be planning, especially on Saturday. We need to be planning to be someplace stronger. We need to maybe be having a get together at a friend's house that has a storm shelter or that is more well built. And this is not knocking manufactured homes. So hear me right now. There are manufactured homes that are on slab foundations that are stronger, but it is the foundation issue that mobile manufactured homes have that makes them vulnerable to tornadoes. Wind can get under them, they can lift them and flip them over. And there's been research done, and even manufactured homes with tie downs, while safer than no tie downs, those tie downs, this is the South, everything rusts, right? Well, they also fatigue and rust underneath as well. So there's a lifespan on how long those are okay. I would say manufactured homes on a slab on an appropriate foundation, not necessarily just blocks, but because you could argue that conventional foundation on blocks, there's questions there as well. But on a slab are better. But we need to be evaluating whether or not the place we're at is strong enough, and making plans now so it's not a last second. Because most of the time when people get hurt, it's a last second. It's a decision was made, and there's tries to be in the last second adjustment. So plan ahead now. It's Thursday. We still have time. Tornado party. As long as we keep the consumption limited to where we're still making smart choices, a tornado get together during the day on Saturday, not a half bad idea. As long as we're gathering at places where we have what it takes to be safe. All right. And I don't want. I'm going to leave you with that graphic one more time because someone was asking about a specific location again, and it's really easy to look at these graphics and say, oh well, Union County is not as bad as Starkville, or Oxford's not. My concern on this, and I think this was kind of evident on this model here. If I go back to this, and the positioning is probably not exactly where I would agree with it here, but you'll notice how there ends up being kind of an area on the northwest side where these are developing. I would say if you are in the area at all, if you're a consistent WTVA viewer and you're used to watching us, you'll notice that the whole area here is involved in these black hatched vertical lines. The odds might be greater here, but the tornadoes could be just as strong for Oxford or for Ashland or for Yazoo City or Vicksburg. The strongest tornadoes could be that far north and west. There's more opportunity for them south and east, but the strength, I don't think, is correlated to the location of the center of this bubble. Okay? So if you're watching this, you're one of our usual viewers, and I don't know we don't have a lot of usual viewers in Memphis, that's why I can say this. If you're one of our usual viewers, your threat is significant across the board for where we're looking at this here. Okay? We will, of course, have updates noontime, latest information there, 5, 6, 10 tonight, probably a Facebook Live some point in the middle there, at some point. Oh man, you know what? With those natural gas issues, I'll try to clean this up, but cold showers are no fun. So anyway, that's a me problem, and we'll figure it out. You take care of your issue, which is knowing where you need to shelter if tornadoes form. Okay? Because there's a good chance that they will, and there's a good chance that a few will be strong pretty nearby. Hopefully not right over us, but we don't want them over anywhere. but it would be extremely surprising for us to arrive at Sunday noontime and not have had a high-end tornado. That would have taken some accuracy with tornadoes hitting counties that were less populated, and it just the worst missing things. That's always a good possibility, and that's something to pray for. That even if it's going to be strong, maybe it just hits trees in the middle of nowhere, and I feel bad for the person who owns that land, but that's a lot better than hitting people. Maybe that's our prayer. Okay? We'll see you guys tonight. Be safe. Be smart.